Welcome, my friends, back to Pennies in Your Path, where I hope and pray that today's message will encourage you to move your doubts in God to fully trust in Him. And once again, I have another dear friend I am so excited to introduce to you today. Terrie, won't you say hello?
Hey, everyone.
We have been friends for a lot of years. I guess it's probably been 11, fifth.
Hayden was in second grade.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And he's married now and out of college. So I can't even do the math right now.
For a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. We've been friends for a little bit. So we're going to get into a little bit about that. And because I know part of it was the need of community that kind of brought us together. We won't go into a lot of those details, but what I want to start us off doing, Terrie, is I want my friends to get to know you a little bit because I think it's going to be clear once we get into the topic of community to understand your heart a little bit more and why God has perhaps laid this topic on your heart.
Oh, sure. Where do you want to begin?
Well, I think one of the interesting facts about you is that there was a season in your life you were a military spouse and you
Hmm.
traveled and you had to change communities a lot.
Oh, yeah. Yes. I've been married for 36 years to a Navy guy. He retired a long time ago, but I remember the very first time. We got married and moved to Japan. And that was a culture shock for me because I grew up in the same town all my life. So when I got to Japan, he took me to our little A-frame house, and I decided this is where I'm going to live for the next 2.5 years. I'm not going anywhere. And that didn't work out too well. Uh, one thing with military life is you can either stay where you are and hope that community comes to you, or you go out and seek the community that God has for you.
Mhm.
And that's what military life did for me. It's, making lots of connections. Oh, it was well worth it.
But it wasn't
Putting,
easy at first because I know some of my listeners they do struggle by because if you will the term introverts they're not somebody that naturally goes
oh,
out.
that's me. I'm an
That's hard to
introvert.
believe now that I
I
mean years
know.
later, but
Yes. Yes, I am an introvert. And it is. And something I've learned is just recently, and it's like, you know what? We all struggle with that. This is weird. This is awkward. I don't want to do this. We all, not one single person says, I got this together. I can go out there and talk to anybody. No, we don't. We all struggle with that.
yes.
All of us.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Well, not long ago, I was in a new group of fellowship, and I found myself kind of standing alone. And I thought, no,
Hmm.
I'm not going to do that. And I had to do that self talk, and I had to find
Hmm.
and muster up that courage to just go introduce yourself to someone and let the Lord lead. But I am not. It was more awkward standing there alone than it was at that point approaching someone. And sure enough, the conversations just began and from one person to the next. But it's just getting that launch into having
Hmm.
a conversation and not waiting for someone to come to you all the time. So it's
Right.
nice when that happens.
And what works really best for me, and I've shared it with a lot of people, and they've used it. You just go up to someone and you go, "Hey, I don't think I've met you. Odds are you haven't, but that way you're not making it awkward." And it's just like, I don't think I've met you before. My name's Terry." And they're like, "Oh, hi, Terry. I have not met you before. My name is, Jody or whatever." And then you just start talking, and that's all it is.
Right,
That
right.
simple of saying your name.
Exactly. So, just to get a little bit further about who you are not only a wife to David, but you are a mom to two adult children. And
Mhm.
tell us a little bit about that and the littles that you have now.
Oh, the littles that I have. I tell you what, adult children are great, or having children are great, grandchildren are better. Everyone says that, but you have to experience to understand it. Right now, my oldest and his lovely wife and lives in Texas. They're in Bridgeport, Texas, which is way outside of Fort Worth, and they have two adorable children.
They are.
Caroline, who is 3, I think she's 13 because she can talk. Like, I mean, she carries on adult conversations, which is scary at times. Gigi, did you see the excavator? Gigi didn't know what an excavator was at that time. She's quickly Googling it. And
Right.
then she has a younger brother, Caspian, who is 7 months old.
Oh,
And that anyway, and he is I don't exactly know what his title is, but he works at a very large church in Paradise, Texas, and he does all their lights and programming. And then my daughter, right now, they are in limbo because her husband joined the Air Force and he's in Mississippi. And I'm really privileged to have my daughter and granddaughter living with us until further notice. And Gemma is, oh gosh, she's 18 months old. So, so
don't
that's,
you love it? I mean, yeah, darn it, you know.
I know it's, I mean, it's like, oh, and every morning, I get to cuddle up with her and stuff like that. And I'm just hoping the Lord is kind and doesn't send them to the other side of the world.
Right, right. But
But if he does,
you currently live in Florida, so that road to Texas is getting shorter and shorter and still longer because you get to go back and forth there too.
yes, a friend, I wasn't challenged by her, but she could drive 10 hours. And I'm thinking, she can drive 10 hours. I can drive 10 hours.
Right. Yeah, we've done a couple of road trips to get up our courage to do that. Yeah,
Uh-huh. Yes.
it's not an easy thing if you're not used to it. So, so there's a couple other things I want my friends to know about you. I know when I first met you, I kind of asked you what you did in that season of your life because your kids were pretty much at that place. They were about to be empty nesters and all that.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
you called yourself a volunteer, what was it?
I think I said
Pro no,
full-time prof.
professional. It was a professional volunteer, and then when I learned of all the things that you volunteered, I was like, "Oh my goodness, that is a great title." I never knew that existed, but now
I don't know if it does or not, but I made it that way.
right, you're always giving and serving, and I love that about you. And one of your other gifts, that my family personally benefited from and still does is the gift of hospitality because I know when we lived in Florida for those 11 and a half years, you were one of the families that took us in, especially even on holidays. So we had a
Hmm.
place to go at Thanksgiving, for instance.
I
And
know it's not
so,
the
yeah,
same.
no. And so our youngest son still lives in the area, and I know that you kept
Hmm.
the doors open for him as well. And it's interesting because I was talking to him recently about Thanksgiving and what we were going to do up here and all that. And he's like, Mom, I really, really love the idea of what we've been doing. He has taken your example and he now is looking at doing it in his home.
Oh,
He said that this Thanksgiving I've got a couple of people I'm going to invite and I want them to come over and give them a place to be able to be connected in community
uh-huh.
fellowship. So it really was a branch off of what you demonstrated, and then he's like, you know what, I can do that. I can do that.
Yeah,
And so
that's awesome.
yeah, I wanted to share that with you. I was really
Oh, that's
encouraged about that.
fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's not like I exactly invented this thing. I modeled what someone else did for us, and and there were strong believers, and that just shows you how that just trickles down.
It does.
Yeah.
So
Hmm.
before we get into our topic further, because we really already been talking about it a little bit, uh,
Hmm.
before we got on here, you had a bird situation, and I thought, yeah, I want my friends to hear about your little experience here before we get in more into our topic.
Oh, Monday morning madness. That's what we can
Right,
call this.
right. We're
Um,
recording that on Monday here.
Yeah, I was in the process of getting ready to walk out of my bedroom after getting ready for the day, and my daughter is like, Mom, come here." And I'm like, "What's going on?" She goes, "There is a bird in the house." And I immediately thought, "I know she's not lying, but I hope she is lying." And I come around the corner of my bedroom and this I mean, it's a small bird. It's bigger than a finch, but it flies across the house. And I'm just like, this is crazy. No way. So it did, I mean, and I have a true open concept house. So
Yeah.
it's like, how in the world am I going to catch this bird? And so the Lord directed it into my bedroom. Yay! Most people would freak out, but I'm like, yay! So I was able to shut the door that goes into our master bathroom. I shut the door that leads into our bedroom from the hallway. And then we have a door that goes out to the porch. And then from the porch opens to the, open airway or whatever. So I opened the door that went into the porch and on. And after I opened it up, I was like, "Okay, Lord, I've done my part. Now you got to do your part because I can't make this bird fly, but you
No,
can."
I know.
And and probably with less than 5 minutes, it was free.
I
And
love
I was like, "Yay, Jesus.
I mean,
I
yeah,
did it."
I'm like, that would have been good entertainment for the video here, or maybe not. So it's like you had that happen, and then I had a major power flicker here in the house, and I'm like, okay, Lord, I know that we're supposed to do this today. So he is blessing us in many ways.
Oh, with entertainment.
Yeah,
Yes, yes. So
yeah.
that's my bird story today.
I love it. I love it. So it just made me laugh. So let's dive in just a little bit about community. And before I have you share a little bit about what God has placed on your heart, I've recently started at my church what we're calling Leadership Pipeline.
Mhm.
And one of the things that I was reading, it's kind of launching us off on the Imago Day. And I'm going to read just a little bit about that. And then a summary from a book. Where is it written? David Lomas is from chapter 3 of The Truest Thing About You. But before I read what he wrote, just we were kind of discussing Imago Dei, and if you don't know what that is, or my listeners don't, it's a Latin phrase developed by theologians to succinctly describe how humanity is created in the image or like in likeness of God, and you can find that in
Mhm.
Genesis 1:26 to 27. So let me just read this real quick. What I was reading, it said, at the core of Imago Dei is the fact that we are created for community and culture. All of humanity, even in an individual, personal sense, is dependent on Christ as he is the creator and sustainer of all things, even that little bird, which
That's
means,
right.
yeah, which means that people cannot live and behave as if they are self-made and independent. We are also created to live in community. The one thing that was deemed not good by God before the fall was Adam's aloneness. And
Mhm.
then out from his a summary from his page 75 here, he wrote, Adam couldn't fulfill his function as an image bearer without Eve. We are all created for community with God and with our fellow creatures. And that handwriting and that hardwiring, not handwriting, that
Right.
hardwiring for companionship is part of what it means to be the image bearers of God. And then finally, what I was reading, they wrote, culture is the result of humans living together and contributing to society and can be God honoring if God directed. And these points serve to demonstrate that Imago Dei is the way of life that points back to Genesis 1 and how God intended for humanity to live. And I thought, if that's not just spot on to launch us off
Mhm.
a little bit more in depths of community. So, share a little bit about what God was speaking to you when we were talking about just kind of hopping on here and having a chat.
Talking about community. Yeah. Well, something I just kind of noticed since COVID of 2020, and I mean, we were all kind of locked out and and isolated, and some people were isolated alone. I mean, you and I have husbands, but a lot of people, you know, or just by themselves. And as society has opened up, and I mean, we're fully open, but so many of us are still in that lockdown mode, kind of. And sometimes it's with fear, and sometimes it's just the lies of the enemy
Mm,
because he had a year to year and a half to feed us all certain lies. Has nothing to do with COVID. It has something to do with you're not smart enough, you're not pretty enough, you're not. I mean, it's the all you're nots, and and that's why community is so important because God uses community to tell the truth. And a lot of times, we've gotten used to not, it's like, well, I've been watching church online. I don't even need to go to church. And that's not, that's a lie too, because God tells us in Hebrews to continue to meet together.
That's right.
So, um, so the thing about community is we need each other. I mean, just like you read. I mean, and if we didn't need each other, God would just probably just made Adam, but
Right.
he needed a helper, and we are stronger together. In Ecclesiastes, God says two cords, one person alone, you're in trouble. Two, you can fight off the enemy, and then three, it's just a strong cord. Um, the oh gosh, I mean, my heart I just want to go and grab everybody and just say, come, 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 come and get involved again. When how also when to get on the topic of community, I was asked to lead a group, a Bible study. It's called the Belonging Project, and it's like finding your tribe. And
Mhm.
I thought, oh, let me think about that. And then as I'm driving around town, I see the word community everywhere. And so I really felt like God was like, all right, child, I need you to really get in there because community is important to me and it's a driving force. And if it's your soapbox, you're going to talk about it a lot. And that's what I've done or what I do. And it's just and there's just Bible verses after Bible verses that encourage us to meet together. All right. So the next thing about that, so obviously we were supposed to meet together, right?
Right.
So the next thing is how to be good at being community. And Jesus tells us all that, he says, they're going to know you're my disciples by your love.
Mm.
And and that's just something God has really pressed on my heart. He goes, Terry, you've got to love better. And I'm
Oh,
like, well, how do I
wow.
do that?
Yeah.
I go, well, he's like, well, I mean, I do. I'm like, well, how am I supposed to do that? And so some of the things is he goes, I want you to listen more, listen with intent.
Hmm.
And I don't know about y'all, but if I'm sitting in church with all, with all my brothers and sisters, I'm not going to really have a conversation with you to listen. I'm going to be listening to my pastor
Right.
intently to what he has to say. So I'm not really in that's community, but that's not real community. Real community begins when you get into your small groups.
Right. Right.
And that's where you start listening intently. And then and you're to love well. So what I try to do is I try to meet with some ladies that God puts on my heart, and I can kind of look at their body language, and it speaks volumes about maybe they don't have self-confidence or they're struggling. Just I mean they just something is not right. And I will meet with them one to one, listening.
Oh,
I
I
don't do a
love
whole lot
that.
of talking.
Right.
I
Right.
just do a whole lot of listening because a lot of times people just want to be heard.
Right. That is so true. You,
Mhm.
uh, when I was reading something you wrote, there was something you came across that thought it was really good. It's about one another. Do you remember that?
Oh, yes, yes. We've got to do I mean, I don't know if I wrote that down, but it's like we've got to do we can do better at one anothering. And it takes two people to one another with someone else. We
Right.
can't
I
one
love
another
that.
alone.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you're right.
Yeah.
No one can be one another without someone to one another with.
Right,
I
right,
love
right.
that. I love
And
that.
so
It's just
you
so strong.
and you have to have community to do that.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, if you really, as you're reading, especially in the New Testament, all like every time you saw one another and you kind of highlighted it, you'd be going, "Wow, that's a lot." I think there's like around 56 one another's.
Right, right. And I think
Mhm.
that's just powerful. So just kind of recap, God clearly in God's word, He's created us for community to one
Mhm.
another, with one another, and
Right.
because of what has happened in our world, I know prior to that too, but what stands out is when COVID came around, a lot of us after a while actually got comfortable in being in our space. And then we
Mhm.
ventured out perhaps to the store or what have you. And what I have learned too, for some, getting back out in public, being around a lot of people has caused anxiety where there wasn't anxiety
Sure.
before. And so
Mhm.
there's so many reasons, while some still have not come out in community. And if anyone is listening or watching, or hopefully they'll be reading as well, but my hope and prayer is that God will use this conversation to remind them they're the ones that might need to be the that takes that step. There might not be a Terrie Cash or Jody Aiken that says, "Hey, come on over here, and I'll invite you in on this conversation," just like you were
Mhm.
talking about, starting this study, or when you were in military life, you had to go to the community,
Mhm.
and we've got to be responsible for ourselves in that and put ourselves out there in that situation.
Sure. Yes, yes, yes. That's called taking the first steps. And the thing
Yeah.
is, you can trust God with that. You really and truly can.
Mhm.
You just if you have to physically, and I've done this, y'all. It's like, all right, Lord, hold my hand. Let's
Oh yeah.
go.
Yeah,
I mean, he's your daddy. He wants to hold your hand.
right, right, right.
Mhm.
Yeah, and as far as it's community in church, I know there are some legit situations where there are some really bad health situations, and there are some people. So I just want to put that out there. We
Yeah.
see you.
Oh,
We know,
yeah.
we acknowledge that and support that because of the health. There are some that are having to work and they're not able to make it on at to church at this particular Sunday or this particular week. We see you and
Right.
we acknowledge that. But for
Right.
those that really can make it out there to the community, to be a part of the body of believers and to the
Mhm.
church, we want to inspire and encourage you that uh, it's okay that you've struggled, but it's not okay to stay there any longer. I
Absolutely
want
not.
to.
Right. In Proverbs, God says iron sharpens iron.
Mhm.
Well, if you're sitting in the knife drawer all by yourself, you're not going to be sharpened.
No, no, and I've had
Right.
so many people, even recently, said, "This is our first time back at church since everything, and I didn't realize how much I needed it and missed it." Because,
Mhm.
and I think part of it, we just get comfortable in those habits of that.
Yeah.
And when I
Mhm.
was preparing for this, I think you mentioned a verse in Hebrews, and this might be the one you were referring to. It's Hebrews 10:24 through 25. It says, "And let us consider how to stir up one another to love and good works, not neglecting to meet together, as it is a habit of
Mhm.
some, but encouraging one another all the more as you see the day drawing near." And so,
Right.
even back in those days when the historical days, there were some that had the habit of not meeting, and we see over and over where it's critical and crucial to meet. And I think you're so right. No matter what size your church is, the community really takes place when you can get a smaller, when you go and you're with the large body, but then
Mhm. Mhm.
real community happens when you get with that smaller group. Some might call it Sunday school or connect group or home groups or
Mhm.
life groups or whatever that might be for you. But that's where somebody knows your name, somebody knows that
Yes.
you're sick and why you're missing. It's that accountability. And
Yes.
we get to pray for one another. It's all those things that we forget we're missing because we got in the habit of being a recluse in a sense, of
Mhm.
that. So
Yes. One of the things, this was a brand new small group that we started.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like our fourth time meeting. And one of the ladies just opened up and shared the struggle that she was having. I mean, she that was a big step of faith because she really didn't know. And none of us knew each other very well. And then another lady opened up and shared her story. And
Mm-hmm.
another lady opened up and shared her story. So we ended up being like 7 women, and they're just, "Here, have a tissue, we're passing out tissues."
Yeah, just being there for one another and supporting one
Yeah,
another and not being alone. And so I love that. And it
yeah,
being ultimately grounded in the word, because I know that you're faithful to always just point back to Jesus. What does Jesus say about this? What does the word
oh,
say
yeah,
about this? And
right.
so no, that's good. So I think we touched on this a little bit about reaching out to, if you notice someone, or if you notice that someone hasn't been around for a while, reach out through a letter, a text, a phone call, a visit, drop a plant on the front door, or what have you, are all good
Mhm.
ideas.
Yes, yes. I dropped off a little quick thank you card and a gift card to a friend of mine just to say, "Hey, I just want to know how much I appreciate you and the job that you're doing." And they text me back and they said, "You didn't have to get me a gift card. Your card alone was valuable."
Isn't that
And I
neat?
thought, and I was like, and what did it cost? Time,
Right,
a
right,
little bit of time.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Minister to
So,
others as you would like to be ministered to or reached out to.
and that's the key right there.
Yeah.
Right. I
Yeah.
mean, I like that. Minister to others like you want to be ministered to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's good. Well, Terry, I think we're wrapping up here. This has been a great, great conversation. I've really enjoyed it, and I'm so excited that I talked you into coming on here with me. It's been
Oh,
good.
well, God took care of that one too.
I know, right? Friends, as we're wrapping up here, I just want to encourage you, if you've not already subscribed to the podcast, if you're listening to, or to the YouTube channel, I ask that you subscribe. Or if a friend, you're listening to this and they've emailed you a copy of the blog, because we've got a short written portion of our conversation that's going to be on the blog as well. I would be honored if you'd subscribe or share this. And we would love to hear in the comments below, either in the podcast or YouTube or what have you. You can contact me. I've got a link in that in the show notes. Just want to hear your take on community, and perhaps of where you were and where God's brought you. And better yet, uh, I'd love to hear a testimony of how God has helped community bring you out of that shell, kind of thing. So, if led, I'd love
Or
to hear from you. Yeah,
yeah, I would love to know, if someone says, "How can we do community better?"
yeah. No,
Uh,
that's awesome. Yeah, but
we're always learning.
absolutely, always learning. So, well, friends, that's a wrap for this one, and I'm delighted to get to introduce you to Terry. I'm not sure who else I've got to introduce, but I promise you, I do have some more friends out there, and if not, I'm going to make some quick friends because I love doing this. So until next time, be blessed.